Thanks for coming to tonight's webinar on Florida State University System and what it takes to get in. I'm Judi Robinovitz, Certified Educational Planner. I'd like to tell you that there are a number of handouts that you may find handy to have for after the webinar to look things up, and you can find them all on our website at scorewebinar.com, right with the listing for this particular webinar. So, as you probably know, we have 12 state universities here in Florida, and they are located all around the state. And for 9 years in a row, our state university system was ranked by U.S. News & World Report as the #1 state university system in the country. Within our state universities, four of the more difficult ones to gain admission to, have been noted and named preeminent state research universities because of all the world-class research going on at FSU, University of Florida, University of South Florida, and FIU in Miami. And one of the, I find, most interesting things about our 12 state universities is the sizes, that they range from really under 1,000 to all the way up to roughly 60,000. Yet, despite their different sizes, and you'll see their different admission, GPA, SAT, percent admitted, they all use the same factors to determine admission. It's a student's academic record is the most important, followed by test scores, and then there is holistic or more subjective type of information. And because all of our state universities recalculate the GPA and don't use the GPA on the transcript, if you go to recalculatemygpa.com, which is part of our website, you'll be able to recalculate your GPA the same way as our state universities do, probably within perhaps 1/10 of a point, because there's minor differences in the way they calculate. And by the way, many other universities use exactly this same calculation. It's a core weighted, and you can also get a core unweighted GPA. But the state university system does use a core weighted GPA, so only the core academic classes. So in order just to be eligible to apply, you need to meet certain requirements. And typically, if you graduate from a public or private high school, at least here in Florida, you will most likely have met all of these requirements in terms of the number of years for all the core subjects, plus 2 academic electives. It goes a little bit further than that because, excuse me, besides the curriculum breakdown, they're looking for a core GPA recalculated of at least a 3.0. And if you have that, then any test score for SAT, ACT, or the classic learning test would be accepted. If your GPA is lower than that, and again, it's that core recalculated GPA weighted, if it's between 2.5 and 2.99, then you need certain minimum SAT, ACT, or CLT scores. And there are also some other scores that can be used, but these are the most common, excuse me. So the classic learning test, we've only been using it here in Florida since 2024, and Florida was the very first state to approve that test for admission. And I've given you a website that if you'd like to learn more about it, but I will tell you that there are precious few students who have used it for admission. So a few fast facts about our whole state university system, that we serve just over 350,000 students, and we've awarded just over 75,000 bachelor's degrees last year. We do have the second largest public school system in the nation, and we graduate students in 4 years at about 66%, looking at as an average overall 12 state universities. And there is a guarantee that if you are in the top 20% of your high school graduating class, assuming your high school ranks, you are guaranteed admission into one of the state university schools. It's not necessarily the one of your top choice, but and there are some rules and regulations about it, but it is called the Talented 20. So perhaps the most interesting fact is that with the new enhanced ACT, the state universities in Florida and Bright Futures are not requiring science. And in fact, the ACT Superscore, the composite Superscore that will be used for any student applying to a state university in Florida, will not include the science, regardless of when the student took the test. So even if your ACT is from a year ago, and you had science, that science score will not be included in your super scored composite score. They'll see it, can't tell you what they will do with it. And we have one of the lowest costs of earning a degree. In fact, I think it was just quoted that it is the very lowest cost of earning a degree in the nation. It is here at our state university system in Florida. And just a few days ago, I did attend a presentation from the admission directors of all 12 of our state universities. And there was one buzzword that got used over and over and over again. I'm going to show it to you, but keep it in the back of your mind, trying to figure out what you think that one word is that we kept hearing over and over and over again. Okay, here it is. It was AI, and you're going to see that come up a lot in this presentation as we discuss academics. So I'd like to give you at a glance what it took this year in mid 50% ranges of test scores and GPA. And remember, that's a core weighted and recalculated GPA to get into our state universities, each one of them. And when you look at a range, like for instance, looking at FSU 4.3 to 4.6, please don't interpret that to mean, oh, you must have a core weighted GPA of 4.3 to 4.6. No, it means that the middle 50% of the students who were admitted had between a 4.3 and a 4.6. So 25% of the admitted students had less than a 4.3, and 25% had more than a 4.6. How much lower than a 4.3? Difficult to say. 4.2, 4.1. I'd say if the GPA is as low as maybe 3.6 or 3.7, it might be out of range. I can't tell you that for sure because that information is really not public. So one of the downloads that's on our website has all of this data, plus more dealing with things like deadlines and whether or not essays or recommendations, etc., are actually required. So the other very interesting thing I feel about our state universities is the wide range of how competitive admissions is. If we look at FSU and UF, they are clearly the most competitive of all 12. But looking at the other end of the spectrum, there is another 5 that are significantly less competitive. And then there are those that are, in the middle. So there is a range for, I would say, for a huge number of, a huge range of students academically and test-wise to get into one of our state universities. There are honors programs within our state universities as well. And you can see here what you need to do to apply. And in some cases, there is an extra essay, and it could be application through the Common App. It could be application afterwards through a university's portal, which is something that students check once they've applied to a university. So in terms of applying to one of our state universities, all 12 of them are actually on the Common App, along with almost every university you've heard of in the country, and even some that are out of country. So there are over 1,000 universities on the Common App, all 12 Ivies, many of our privates here in Florida. What you're not going to find on the Common App, for example, is the University of California system. They have their own application. There is also another application platform called Coalition. At this point, none of our state universities actually use that or require it, and Common App is really the way to go because it just streamlines the application process if you're applying to a few of our state universities. I want you to note the early deadlines. Every one of our 10 of our 12 have early deadlines in October or November. And yes, there are regular deadlines that are significantly later, but the early bird truly does get the worm, and it's generally easier if you apply during the early period. And it could be called a priority deadline, or it could be called an early action deadline. Firmly suggest that you apply before the deadline. And many scholarships that are given by our state universities are going to be tied to deadlines, and typically they're more likely to be tied to an early deadline. So if you're interested in getting a merit-based award or leadership award or basically non-need-based financial aid, you're going to want to get your application in before the deadlines that you see here. So most of our state universities do not ask you to send an official high school transcript when you apply. They prefer to have you do some data entry and use specific online forms, entering each of your courses, your grades when you took them, so that the recalculation of your core weighted GPA is much faster and easier because it could all be done with really no human intervention. It's just done by using the stars, which used to be called the SSAR, that most of our universities either require or recommend, make optional. Only UCF uses something called the Spark. It's their own invention. And neither Florida Gulf Coast nor Florida International use these self-reported grades, and instead they do want your official transcript sent by your high school, typically sent through Common App electronically. If you'd like to get some more information on STARS, which stands for the Self-Reported Transcript and Academic Record System, I've given you two websites here that you can learn more about it, but you do need to have, I would say, your official transcript in front of you, and perhaps two people sitting by the computer, one reading the transcript and checking it off as the other enters all the information relevant to that course. The Spark works in a somewhat similar vein, that UCF will actually send you a link to your Spark once you've submitted your application. So again, submit your application if you're applying to UCF before their October 15th early action deadline, so you can get working on your Spark. And there's some great instructions for filling that out on UCF's website. And just to give you an idea of what a STARS looks like when you're filling, after it's been, filled in, I'm showing you just some of the English courses that a student took in 9th and 10th grade, and it is organized by subject. And this is one of the ways a college might see it on their computer system. This actually comes from FSU, and it's color coded so that I can quickly look at it and say, gee, if there's a lot of pink and a lot of green and some of that bluish color, then I know this is a student who really challenged herself, because those are all the more advanced courses. So let's now move into specifics, and I will stop every few colleges to see if there are questions, and I am going to be doing the colleges in alphabetical order. And so we're going to start with FAMU up in Tallahassee. In fact, it is the only Florida city that has 2 state universities, and FAMU is our only historically Black university in the state university system. It's actually been ranked by U.S. News and World Report as the #1 historically Black college and university. That's what they call them, HBCUs. It's been #1 in the nation as a state public institution, as a historically Black university, and it's actually third out of all of the historically Black universities in the nation. So FAMU is divided into a total of 14 colleges and schools. And you can see that there is a wide range from STEM to journalism, to the environment, just a wonderful range of colleges and schools. But I'd like to start off by focusing a little bit on the engineering school there, because it is the only shared college of engineering in the country. It is shared with FSU because they are both in Tallahassee. So FSU students who want to major in engineering actually take their engineering courses on the FAMU campus. And you can see that there's a very wide range of engineering specialties that are part of this very well regarded dual college of engineering. And the most popular major selected by the freshmen who entered this year are listed. Interesting that every single one of them is in STEM. And there are a few things that are fairly unique. That cybersecurity is going to be popping up a lot. You'll see it across a number of different universities. And a 3+3 law program is one where you can cut out 1 year of your undergraduate education in order to start law school a year earlier. And they do have a 3+3 law program. And they feel that these are their areas of expertise. And again, almost all of them are STEM. And they recently got 2 amazing honors. There's something called the Carnegie classifications that, among other things, will classify someone as a research or research 2 university. And they also do an opportunity college or university. And basically, FAMU is one of just 27 schools that has gotten both of those designations, and they did get them this year. And the newest thing, just opened actually on campus, is a new residence hall, the second phase of their towers. It did increase their housing capacity quite a bit. And it's very like ultra modern, state of the art, which is what we're seeing on a lot of campuses these days in terms of new construction. And just a few fun facts. They have 3 very famous, they probably have a lot more than 3, but I picked out 3 very famous alums, especially Kimberly Godwin, who was the first Black woman to ever lead a major news network. And their marching band is considered, one of the tops in the country, and they have played, even at the Super Bowl and certainly at, Obama's inauguration. Now we're moving back down south to Boca Raton, to Florida Atlantic University, and they had a record high number of applications this year. The school is getting so much more competitive. They even went to a wait list this year, and 4,300 brand new freshmen, including almost 200 at their honors college, which is up in Jupiter. Because it has gotten so much more competitive, it was stressed very highly when I was talking to their director of admission that you must get your application in no later than that October 15th deadline. And please don't try to submit it the night before. And that housing is hard to come by. And there is a deadline of March the 20th at 5 p.m. to apply for housing. And you're going to see that it's going to be across the board. And in fact, one of our state universities does actually require the housing application even before you find, well, they don't require it. They want the housing application even before you know if you're admitted or not. We'll get to that pretty soon. One of my favorite programs at FAU is the BSMD program. It's a combined undergraduate graduate program, so that, and you can do it in the typical 8 years, 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of med, or you can do it in 7 years and cut out your last year of undergrad. And instead of having that senior year of undergrad, you have your first year of med school. They have it on both their the main campus of FAU in Boca. They also offer it at the Wilkes Honors College up in Jupiter. Just to apply, there are some minimums that you need to meet. The students who get in are more than those minimums. But in addition, you actually have to have on your resume, some direct patient interaction. You have to be an avid, volunteer. They have to see evidence that you would be a good physician. And there are a whole bunch of additional requirements for the application. It is initially, through the Common App. And it does give you conditional admission to FAU's College of Medicine, but you do have to meet certain GPA requirements just before you would start med school, and certain MCAT. MCAT is the med school equivalent of SAT or ACT. But it saves you from that really god-awful med school application process. I know it well because I work with students applying to med school, and it is a much more complex application process with many more essays than the applying to colleges. FAU has a wonderful direct admit nursing program. It's not a pre-nursing program where then you have to apply to get into nursing. You can get into nursing from the very beginning. These are the minimums that you need just to apply for it. However, the admitted students had significantly higher than that. They typically had a GPA, a core weighted GPA of over a 4.0. So there are a few things that, FAU is pretty well known for. Again, we're into the STEM area. And I think that one of the coolest things is that there's a casino and gaming industry management certificate that you can get. And you can also be a business major there without taking calculus ever, which is the thing that scares many kids away from majoring in business, in any form of business. There are some what are called pathway programs for students that have a little bit less in terms of, let's say, the GPA, or the test scores. However, they're going to be changing for this coming year, and they have not yet finalized exactly what it would take to get in, or the kinds of students they were looking for, or whether they would start in summer or fall. So they're currently being reworked, and I'm sorry I don't have the information for you yet, but just know that there are some other pathways into FAU that you can be offered. So newish on campus, this is their athletic complex that really put, I think, FAU on the map, because of the great training rooms, for athletes, and the labs that were in there, and basically much better facilities at the graduate level for a sports management program. So we used to think of FAU several years back as sort of a commuter school. It's not that anymore. These were residence halls that were built about 4 years ago. There's another one under construction now. Gorgeous, not for freshmen. It's sophomores and juniors, and it will open a year from now. And one of the coolest things at FAU is the way they have renovated the whole student center. My favorite part is the esports arena and gaming center. It is just a wonderful place for to kids to hang out, to collaborate, to compete. And I would say it's becoming more and more popular across campuses in America as the, esports. So brand new on campus, and it will be opening in 2027, is a brand new building for the Holocaust and Jewish Studies. It's really just a hub for studying, not just that, but human rights, and there's leadership training. It's very exciting construction, and sort of not quite hand in hand with it, but along a similar vein, is that they're FAU is going to be expanding its Hillel that is named in honor of its most recent benefactor, Debbie Newman Bernstein. And they even got a higher research classification, the R1, from the Carnegie. And there's 187 colleges in the country that have this R1 designation. They actually have to spend more on research and development and graduate more students who've done doctoral research on an annual basis than the R2 designation. And just a quickie about the Wilkes Honors College up in Jupiter, very small, well under 1,000 students. Lots of pre-meds, pre-dent, pre-vet, pre-healthcare, basically because the kids can do research, right there at Scripps Institute and Max Planck, which are two of the most renowned research institutes in the country. They're both by the Wilkes Honors College campus. And in terms of what it took this year to get into the Honors College, those are numbers that are higher than the typical FAU numbers. I would say they're perhaps a bit lower than University of Florida, but they are, for a student who wants a smaller environment, lots of research opportunities, honors program, Wilkes is an amazing option. And there is a program on Amazon Prime called the College Tour, and a number of our state universities of Florida have been featured in it. And I'll show you the ones that I know about. I'm not going to play the video for you, but if you're interested in visiting and can't get there, this may be a great way to visit. And I'll stop for a minute to see if there's any questions.
There was a couple questions. Where is it? Oh, how can you submit your stars on their website if their website says you have to submit your app first?
So they don't all work the same way in terms of submitting your stars and submitting your application. They do eventually have to be linked together, because otherwise the college won't get your stars. So if you have to submit your application first, you can still complete the stars, get all of your courses and grades in there, and it just sits, in the computer on the website. You submit your application to whichever university it may be. And a university, first of all, through Common App, will acknowledge that you have submitted. And usually within 1 to 2 days, you will get back an email specifically saying, here's the link to your portal. So every college has a portal for you to check what's going on once they receive everything, so that you can go to your portal and you can see, did they get my test scores? Do they have my transcript? Do they have my recommendation? Do they have my stars? Oh, they don't have a stars, but here are the directions on how to submit the stars. And it's going to typically give you, let's say, a unique registration number. And you're going to go back into your stars, put in that registration number and say, submit to College X, and you'll be able to. And by the way, there are plenty of out-of-state universities that also require the stars. So it's not just, the majority of our state universities here in Florida. It's becoming a very, very popular option.
That was it.
Okay, let's move across the state to Florida Gulf Coast. And it's getting to be a pretty big campus at 760 acres. And I would say Florida Gulf Coast got firmly on the map, 12 years ago, when they won the Atlantic Sun Conference Championship and had one of the biggest upsets in the NCAA, tournament history, when they defeated the number 2 seed of Georgetown. You just don't hear of a smaller university like Florida Gulf Coast University, relatively smaller, let's say, in our university system, defeating what was a top school in basketball. So a few fast facts about, Florida Gulf Coast. It's not, as difficult to get into or as competitive admission, let's say, as, UF or FSU. But the really cool thing is that they have 100% pass rate on the nursing licensing exam. That's not an easy exam. So they're obviously doing a great job, with their nursing programs. They also have formed a partnership with Podium Education in order to earn certifications in AI and lots of other computer related fields. And they haven't raised their prices in 11 years. I don't know of anything else in Florida whose price hasn't gone up in 11 years. So just some, interesting fast facts about Florida Gulf Coast, a few others that are, athletics are really a big part of this campus. And you can see a number of championships in both men's and women's sports. And Greek life is really important on that campus. They don't have separate housing. Wait till you see the housing. But Greek life is pretty important there. And they only just now opened up a study abroad program that second semester freshmen can take, and it's at the University of Limerick. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen these. I've seen these when I visited some colleges in Oregon several years ago. But these are food delivery robots that you can basically, through the internet, order some food and feed it in, where your location is and your student ID. And it will be delivered to you in a robot. And it's really fun to watch someone who's never used the robot before try to open it to get their food. I mean, there's a way, to do it, but you'll see these roaming around their campus. So Florida Gulf Coast is divided into 10 different either colleges or schools and a wide range of, academic offerings. But among their hottest, coolest, most unique majors, I would say, is definitely their PGA golf management. There's not a lot of colleges in the country that offer this. And in fact, it is the largest such program in the country. So if you, are a kid who's really a great golfer and loves the idea perhaps of management, perhaps that PGA golf management program, it is something, for you. So these are some of just the more interesting or hottest, majors that they offer at Florida Gulf Coast. And there are a number of new majors, and you're going to be seeing more and more computer science related majors popping up at campuses. The water school is also quite unique. It's only been around for about 3 years, but basically there's a tremendous focus on solving water quality issues in the region, because remember, we're over on the West Coast. So, we're close to the ocean here. It's lots of emphasis on, let's say the ecology, the environment, and water. So it is, as you can see, a beautiful ultra-modern building. But let's move into the housing, because I think the housing is especially fabulous. Primarily, I would say the one I'm most familiar with is the North Lake Village, because this is really like resort living, because you've got a diner, and you've got a Starbucks and a pool and a fire pit and volleyball, and it's just very, very cool looking. Of course, that lake is a man-made lake, but it's just a very cool place to live. And I believe that every student there has his or her own room. It might be part of a suite, but they're single rooms. And more than just the water building, because the environment is such an important element in an FGCU education, that they have ice farms that cool buildings, and probably one of the very largest solar farms of any college campus in America. And this is pretty cool, where they have an edible botanical garden. And, students and faculty make tremendous use out of it. And it's really become a living classroom for Florida Gulf Coast. And the mascot of the university is an eagle, and there is a pair of ospreys that nest upon, a tower at the main entrance. And I guess, they're just watching over the students who are there, and they're symbolizing, they're a wonderful symbol of the university's commitment to the environment. Okay, we're zigzagging across the state. We're coming south again, and we're primarily looking at Miami.
Oh, actually, one question.
Oh, there is a question.
Yeah. How are admission stats different for out-of-state applicants?
That's a hard question about how are admission stats, different for out-of-state applicants. Most of our state universities do not share the difference between in-state and out-of-state. They claim that they're held to the same standards. I do have some specifics when we get to FSU. And I would say that once you see those numbers for FSU, that might give you an idea for at least our more competitive universities. But I would say that it's definitely more competitive for an out-of-stater at UF and at FSU, at our two flagship universities. And I'd say it's getting harder for an out-of-stater at both UCF and USF, which are, I'd say, primarily the next two most competitive, universities. But at a minimum, you need to have, you need to be within that range. So in some sense, some of admission to our state universities, I don't want to say is completely predictable, but that if you're well into the ranges, that you have a great chance. And I would say an out-of-stater probably needs to be a bit higher in those ranges. Anyway, FIU, primarily in Miami, but they also have, other campuses, for example, in China. But everything that I'll be talking about this evening is really relevant to their location in Miami. So they talk about pathways. Just like FAU talks about pathways, there's different ways into that university. But they don't call it starting in summer or fall. They call it early fall. Not sure why they are so different from everyone else, but when you see on the FIU website a reference to early fall, it's the same as what we call summer B. It's starting, later into the summer, after graduation is over and after some, summer downtime. But you can get more information about the pathways and actually find out which pathway you are most suited to. But it's pretty automatic admission if you are in the top 10% of your graduating class. So FIU is known as a minority majority university in the sense that the majority of their students are from underrepresented minority groups. And they talk about freshmen as, basically they refer to them as FTIC, first time in college students, because some of them actually don't necessarily come in as freshmen. You may come in with enough credits to be a sophomore or a junior, but it is your first time in college. But you can see the percentage of first gen students. And so typically it means neither mom nor dad went to college. And sometimes it's defined as neither mom nor dad has a college degree. It depends on the college. The Pell Grant is a government grant that goes to families whose income is below, pretty low, let's say a subsistence level. And if you have a student aid index, and that's part of the federal, the FAFSA, the free application for financial aid that every college requires, if you have a student aid index, which is the number that they give you at from the calculations of the FAFSA, if it comes out at 0 or less, then they're going to meet 100% of the cost of the tuition and fees. They're not necessarily going to meet your room and board, but it's called the Golden Promise at FIU. They've also been named a fast forward university because of the way that they serve first generation students so well. So FIU also has a BSMD program, although it does not work like FAU's. You don't apply for this particular program until the very end of your sophomore year. And you need to have an overall GPA of 3.6. And if you're going to be pre-med, you'll get very familiar with the term BCPM. It stands for biology, chemistry, physics, and math, where there's a minimum GPA there. and also being a U.S. citizen. So if you are accepted, it doesn't guarantee you admission, but you're close to it. You're basically, as long as you maintain, your grades. If you do well on the MCAT, and a 505 is not, I'd say, maybe it's around an average score, and you have really good experience, then you're going to get into FIU's medical school, which is one of the top medical schools, in Florida. They have a number of new academic areas now at FIU. Look at the data science and AI, and there's advanced AI, and there's business analytics and AI. You can see that a lot of these, majors, again, are STEM oriented, something like, mathematical data analytics, clearly STEM. Very unique is cruise line management and the events and entertainment management, which a few of our schools have, but I haven't seen the cruise line management around very much. So there are some other just very interesting majors. A lot of students are interested these days in crime science. Some of that has to do with the TV show of, what is it, CSI, for the crime science. FIU is also unbelievably well known for its international business. U.S. News, the rankings for 2025, which come out in 2024, was ranked number 2 in the nation. And I think really cool, and I'd love to know more about it, is their major called the Internet of Things. So just like there's talk about outer space, there's also talk about inner space, which is their Medina Aquarius program, because it is beneath the surface of the Florida Keys. And that is obviously, it's a marine sanctuary. It's wonderful for kids who are interested in marine science. And what will be opening really very soon, spring of 2026, is their new College of Engineering and Computing. It's a pretty enormous, ultra-modern building. I believe it's already there now, is within the Green School of International and Public Affairs. They've added sort of an addition on, because the number of students who are interested in pursuing this field, has grown. And you may know that they did rename, I think it was last year, their football stadium to the Pitbull Stadium, because he purchased the rights. He gives them $1.2 million every year for 10 years. And I think as a result, there are more, concerts and other events that are hosted by, Pitbull himself. Sort of like an added little perk for the university. They are also on the Amazon Prime, The College Tour. And let me see if there's more questions. Okay. So yeah, Florida Poly. I think this looks like the Starship Enterprise. Sorry, I am a Trekkie. What is it? Live long and prosper. This is the first, academic building it's more than academic, actually, initially. The first building that was built on campus. It's the IST building. Just very, very, very ultra modern, state of the art. It had study areas and meeting rooms and classrooms. It even had residential facilities when Florida Poly first opened. So you may wonder, who are the students? This is Florida's youngest university. Many of them call them mathletes. They're kids who were just either techies, and they're going to design the future. And they're up to almost 2,000 students, and they have an initiative to get their enrollment up to 3,000 by the year 2030. And so really cool if you're planning to apply to Florida Poly, which only, it's STEM oriented completely. There's no essays, there's no recommendation. They do use the stars. You can self-report your test scores. You don't necessarily need an official score report when you apply. And if you get your application in by November 1st, there's no application fee. So that's, nice encouragement to get your application in. And so, really some cool stuff. I mean, when we think typically of state universities, we think of large lecture halls. Well, this is a typical classroom there. And they have some of the most amazing labs. And these, I believe, are just the labs that are in the original building. Cyber gaming and media, big data, cybersecurity. I mean, clearly you're going to see, lots of computer related offerings, but it's going to be very, very state, of the art. Some of these pictures you're going to see are some of my own pictures from my visiting. This was a pano shot of the library. Their library was featured on Jeopardy because it has no books. It's completely a digital library. And inside, this is not the library. These are just other buildings, on campus. I mean, it's just wow, especially if you like ultra modern. So their graduates earn a lot of money. Their average starting salary is year after graduation is roughly $68,000, which is pretty high, but some of it goes a lot higher than that. And they're getting jobs with some of the top firms in the country. I mean, Microsoft, Apple. Their majors have been just designed not just by academics, but by academics in conjunction with industry people, so that they're very sort of hands-on, lots of collaborative learning going on, all things that are useful for actual working. And among their newer engineering and management types of programs, they also are going to be introducing a 6-year BS to DO, Doctor of Osteopathy school. It's going to be a track that you can get on. I don't know yet how it's going to work, but it is going to be with the Orlando College of Osteopathic Medicine. And physics is going to be a new major. It's like sort of a normal major. So looking a little bit more deeply, at their academics, because they really are very cutting edge, and you're going to start with them, on day one, and it is somewhat of an accelerated path. Every student is going to have an internship because of all the companies that Florida Poly has relationships with. And you're going to be doing a senior capstone project, which is a collaborative project. And honestly, this is what industry is looking for, or kids who like to collaborate. And by the way, colleges are looking for that same thing. Yes, they like to see leaders, but they like to see collaboration also. It's a very important part of sort of the extracurriculars. These are some of the industry leaders that they have relationships, partnerships with, internships. And I'm sure you recognize almost all of them. I think that's pretty special for a relatively new university, and that's relatively small. So they're growing in terms of the number of student organizations. Most recently, they took 3rd place in the Electric Formula Sun Grand Prix. That was just last year. That's the car that they created for that race. And their largest team, by the way, is the robotics team, but they compete, among other things, in combat robotics. Don't ask me what that is, but I don't think I'd want to be involved in it. Their archery team is pretty good too. Just to show you a little bit more of campus, this was, I believe, the 2nd academic building, the Applied Research Center. So pretty cool looking on the inside, very cutting edge. Their engineering building, 3rd academic building on campus, which has allowed them to increase their population, their student population, their faculty collaboration, and give the kids state-of-the-art classrooms and laboratories. More residence halls. We're up to phase 3. This just opened a year ago and added another 430 beds, but they also added things like social media studios. For those parents who are on this, do you remember when you went to college? First of all, we didn't even have social media, but we didn't have computer studios. We didn't have indoor and outdoor lounges, and grab and stay dining is pretty cool because these are kids who are typically in a rush to get back to their computers. The Student Development Center, this is their, basically their gym. It's in the shape of a phoenix, which is their mascot. And the star here is their aquatics center. It's a competition-sized pool with geothermal heating, which means it's using the Earth's heat to maintain a near constant temperature in the pool, which I think is really pretty cool. Well, what would you expect of Florida Poly? What will be coming soon is a Student Achievement Center. They've started to, fundraising for it. And it's going to have a lot to do with career development and academic support. So that will be coming next. And the announcement that was just made is that they're going to be joining the NAIA athletics, and they will be having 3 men's teams and 3 women's teams, which I think is really pretty cool. And I'm ready to move to FSU.
Just one question. Is the GPA listed on the 2025 admission stats the weighted GPA from the transcript or the one they calculate differently?
Okay. So the question is, remember when I showed you that big, matrix, you might say, or spreadsheet that showed, GPA test scores for each of the 12 universities? The question is this the GPA on the transcript or is this the recalculated? It is definitely not the GPA on the transcript. Not. In fact, I'd say the majority of universities, selective universities, don't use the GPA that's on the transcript. And that's because every college, every high school calculates GPA or weighted GPA differently. So the GPAs on that chart are the core weighted GPAs. That GPA is typically going to be lower than the GPA, back up a minute. If you go to a public high school, let's say here in Palm Beach County, you're going to have 2 GPAs on your transcript. One is going to be weighted, one is going to be unweighted. Okay. The weighted GPA on your transcript in Palm Beach County is likely to be higher, definitely higher than the core weighted GPA calculated by our state universities. And that's because our state universities only give you a bonus point of 1 for each A in an AP, IB, ACE, or dual enrollment course. Whereas your high school, if you get an A, gives you 2 bonus points. The same thing is true with a B, that you're going to get 1.5 bonus points from your high school, but you're only going to get 1 bonus point from the state universities. And it's also only going to count your core courses. So things like PE or music are not going to count when we do a core weighted GPA. Okay. FSU. So the big news, it did upset Alabama very recently, 31-17 in the season opener. And the stadium has been newly renovated, by the way. But I think that's going to make it harder to get into FSU this year, because typically whenever we see a big win athletically, we see the number of applications go up. So it is very competitive to get into FSU. And in fact, if you have a D or an F on your transcript, it could be the kiss of death. And so I would advise, if you've had a D or an F, number 1, there better be a good reason for it. And number 2, you better retake the course. And it's true that FSU typically will see the old grade and the new grade, but retaking the course really shows a commitment to your academics. So to get into FSU, these are the minimum requirements in terms of the number of years you have of each of those courses. However, the typical admit has more. So let me explain that. Let's just start with math. I'll just do math. Math is my favorite because that's my background. So you have to have 4 years of high school math to get in. So 4 years, what do we have? Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, pre-calculus, that's 4 years. but the average admit has 5.5 years. So what does that mean? That means that the students either have AP Calculus, or they have 2 years of AP Calculus, or they have AP Stats, or they have a year of AP Calc and a year of AP Stats. But I'd say it's going to be pretty difficult to get into FSU without having at least AP Stats at a minimum, and typically AP Calc. And students really are expected to have both math and a science senior year, even if you plan to major in underwater basket weaving. Even if you wanted to major in theater or English, and your hope was never to take another STEM course again, well, you will have to no matter what. Okay. So you can see the vast number of applications that they had, and the small number of admitted students. The admit rate in-state, out-of-state, very different from each other. The overall admit rate, 30%, is, I guess, reasonable in today's market. But in-state, 38%, out-of-state, 19%. And so you could see what a typical out-of-stater looked like for FSU. Now, remember, other things get you in, because if you were a recruited athlete, if you were a ballerina that the dance program really wanted desperately because of your audition. So those students make that in with less when it comes to the academic record or the test scores. But you could use this perhaps as a benchmark to say this is a typical out-of-state student for FSU. And I would just assume that the typical out-of-state student for UF might be a tad higher, but not much. So the applications went up 9% from last year to this year. That's a big jump. But look what happened in 10 years, almost 200%. So I have to define FSU as hyper competitive. And almost 2/3 of the class that got in this year had calculus or higher. And definitely, as I said, you have to take math and science as a senior if FSU is going to be realistic for you. And I couldn't believe that the number of AP, IB, ACE, and dual enrollment courses on average that an accepted student has is 13. They could be 1 semester courses or 1 year courses. So what I mean by that is if you take AP Lang, it counts as 1 even though it takes a full year. If you took dual enrollment English ENC 1101, it also counts as 1. It's a 1 semester course. A push, AP US History, 1 year, it counts as 1 year, 1 unit. But if you take, let's say, AP Microeconomics, it counts as 1. It's just a 1 semester course. And first year students start with an average of 37 credits. That basically means you're starting as a sophomore. You may be able to get through FSU in 3 years. I'm not sure why you'd want to rush it. College years other than financial, college years can be the best years of your life. So the honors program, you can see the pretty high numbers for the honors program. They admitted 3/8 of them, so roughly 37, 38% of the students who applied for honors. They also work through their portal that once you've submitted an application to FSU, which I hope you submit early action, which is only open to Florida residents, by the way, within your portal, you'll get the essay question and you submit it through your portal. So they have the earliest, they are among 2 schools that have, I believe, two of our schools have an October 15th early action deadline. If you're out of state, you can only apply, regular. And I would just tell you, do not miss that regular deadline of December 1st. If you wait, whether you're in state or out of state, and you wait until February to apply, the chances of getting in are dramatically reduced. I'm going to actually skip to the next screen because this is a screen that you may want to even take a picture of if you're interested in FSU. By the way, if you are deferred from FSU, submit your first semester grades. And you do have an option to submit a Why FSU video, which I would strongly recommend. This is a chart giving you all the deadlines and materials, like when do your scores have to get there, when does your stars have to get there. And in most cases it's well, it looks like on all cases it's a week after the actual deadline. And you have different deadlines for when your scores have to get there, and then when you're going to find out your admission decision. I've also given you the link to it on their website. And by the way, we are recording. And so if there's something that you missed, you'll be able to go back and play the recording, see the presentation, and, skip to the part where, if you missed something and want more detail. So these are the very, most popular majors for freshmen. And one of the interesting things is that computer science is not a capped major, which it is at many universities where they only allow a certain number of students in, and you can actually even transfer into computer science. CS has become probably the hardest major to get into across the board in universities. FSU, and the same thing is true with UF, they don't admit by major. However, you are expected to have higher level math and sciences if you're going to be a STEM major. And so STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and computer science fits in that. Many of their majors are incredibly highly ranked on a national basis, and I've listed all of them for FSU. And FSU is considered a flagship state university, just like UF. And these are some of their newest majors. And AI education is beginning to permeate more and more what's going on at FSU. So they have a partnership, and there's only 11 colleges in the country that have partnered with Google on research, studying, developing whatever advanced tools. And so students and faculty and staff at FSU actually have access to all of these advanced tools. And I can tell you, as a professional, and even though I'm no longer involved in the computer field, which is also my background besides math, just keeping up with what's happening in the world of AI is really difficult. Thank goodness I have my son Jason, who keeps up with it like crazy and teaches me all kinds of new things. But they have a weekly faculty innovation series on emerging technology so that the faculty can keep up with it, because we all know that teenagers learn things like this a lot faster than adults. So what's new-ish on campus? Student Union, which is really just 3 years old, with restaurants and a bookstore and a sports bar and even a bowling alley. They have special housing, and it's a living and learning community, which is popular on many campuses when kids have an interest in one particular thing, that it could be a whole dorm or it could be like one floor of it. In this case, it's a whole residence hall for first generation students, which opened 3 years ago, and they get to take classes together. About 30% of FSU students are first gen, and there's a tremendous commitment to their success. I'm actually happy to say that my two nephews are both students at FSU. So what will be opening very, very soon is this College of Business Legacy Hall. It will be the very largest academic space on campus, cost well over $130 million. It's just all state of the art, even with a Bloomberg trading room, just areas to study, areas to hang out, and just collaborative space for working together. So truly a world-class facility. Some of you may know that FSU was very famous for its circus. It had one of the very few circus tents on a college campus. It was destroyed in a tornado a couple of years ago. And as you can see, it is being rebuilt. And just a few fun facts about it. And I believe it is open now. It's bigger than the last one because of the number of performers that it can accommodate and the seating as well. But this just gives you an idea of like how much equipment was actually used to create the new circus. Another thing I think is cool is that in addition to its freestanding business school, FSU downtown, so not on main campus, but very close by, is a whole school of entrepreneurship that was named for, car mogul Jim Moran. So it not only has, things that are related to retail entrepreneurship, but it goes into just, STEM entrepreneurship as well. Lots of minors available and computational science. Again, computers are getting in everywhere. So FSU essentially has two schools of business, one that is business and one that is focused on entrepreneurship. And they recently entered into an agreement with Universal AI University in India, which is going to be, creating academics that are focused on the intersection of artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship. So FSU also has a much smaller campus up in Panama City. And if you want to go to a school like FSU, but you say that, it's just much too big for me, this can give you a smaller, more intimate feeling. It even has a dorm on campus. You apply directly to the FSU campus of Panama City. But you can see that these are some pretty smart cookies. I believe a little bit lower than FSU, admissions. It is right on the water. There are some programs that are called pathways that are just other ways like into FSU. The application does ask if you're interested in one of these pathway programs. You will not be offered a pathway program if you say you're not interested. But if you feel that you're borderline admissible, it pays to say that you are interested in one of these pathway programs. By the way, FSU changed its application summer and fall. For the last few years, you had to indicate summer or fall, and that was the only term you would be considered for. They've gone back to something closer to their original, where they're asking you on the application, are you interested in summer? Are you interested in fall? Or would you consider both? And again, I'd say if you feel that you're borderline admissible, say that you want to be considered for both. So these pathway programs are sort of different ways to start college at FSU, but not in, on the main campus. So you could start on Panama City. You could start a first semester or a first year abroad, or you could do what's called the FSU Next program, which is expanding. And I'm giving you the GPAs and test scores that it took to get in for this year. And some of them are definitely, are lower than regular, FSU. So let me just see, let's go into it. Let me go back up to this and explain. The next program, which is the one that is really growing, is that you do one semester at Tallahassee State College. So you're up in Tallahassee, and you actually take one course on the FSU campus. And after that first semester, you transfer into FSU. And you may wonder, well, why do they have programs like this, where you might do your first semester abroad, or you might just do one semester in Panama City? Why do they do something like this? Why can't they just admit everybody to the main campus? So this is a very popular move by many colleges. Kids drop out after one semester. They may be homesick. They may not know how to handle the freedom that is given to them, living, more independently on a college campus. They may feel that they made a wrong choice. But there are a lot of kids who don't return after first semester. Okay. Remember that college is a business. We now have empty beds. That's lost income from our empty beds, and also lost income even from our dining facilities because they're not buying dining plans. They're not here. Same things happened during COVID as well when kids were not on campus. So if you have a 1-semester program in another location, you can typically bring all of these kids as individual cohorts back to your main campus for second semester because there are vacant beds and you're not going to lose any money. So you have extra space for them elsewhere for 1 semester. There's one-year program, and you can, that's one option. But you can now come back, and you come back with your friends who are in this program with you. So it's not like you're transferring in like a newbie. You're not. You're coming with a group of kids who are in that program with you. There is also a first-year abroad program that is not a pathway program. It's like, I like to just do my first year abroad. And there are 4 different abroad campuses. I actually got to visit the Valencia, Spain campus directly across the street from the campus. And it is a very, very small campus. Is this, this bridge and this, I think it's a Gothic building. It's a great, Valencia is a wonderful city in Spain with just so much to do. Okay. FSU has a special summer program for basically first gen and financially disadvantaged Florida students. You have to be a Florida resident. And this is one of the few such programs that you can apply to. Almost all of our universities have these sort of summer bridge programs for first gen or financially disadvantaged students, but they're programs that get offered to you if you're in that category. This is one that you can actually apply for. And you can see the score range, so that is significantly lower than the regular FSU range, and the GPA range is lower as well. But it's a smaller program with lots and lots and lots of mentoring. And it looks like they accepted roughly, a third of the kids who applied for this particular program. And, the majority of them, almost 80% of them actually enrolled in that program. So FSU is known as one of the top 10 most beautiful campuses in America. That's not just some crazy students. That was from the FSU circus. But other accolades besides being a really beautiful campus. ListWire in 2023 said it's the #1 college in the nation for Greek life. And just recently, that may be a typo. It may mean niche 2025, unless it's their niche issue for 2026. But it was rated as the #7 college in the nation for just best student life. They have an incredibly high, graduation rate and retention rate. When you talk about retention rate, it's basically what percentage of your freshmen return as sophomores. And that's a very high rate, that 96% of those kids return. And now we're also staying on the West Coast and looking at New College, but let me see if there's any questions.
Couple questions. Is there a drawback to saying you will do the Pathways program?
That's a great question. And a lot of kids will say to me, if I say I'll do a pathway program, does that mean that I'm just going to be considered for a pathway program? No, you're not going to be considered for a pathway program first. You're going to be considered for the main campus first. If you're not quite at that level where they want to admit you and you're just a little bit below it, you'll be offered a pathway. But if you know that you would not do a pathway program, I'd go elsewhere before I would do a pathway program, say no to the pathway question, that you don't want to be considered.
And is there a difference between dual enrollment classes versus AP classes in terms of how weighted GPA is calculated? And if so, which do you think the colleges prefer to see?
Okay, that is a great question. Is there a difference between AP, and let me say AP or IB because colleges look at them pretty equivalently, and dual enrollment in the way that the GPA is calculated by our state university system? And is there a preference? So GPA is calculated exactly the same, whether it's AP, IB, even ACE or dual enrollment. They both get 1 bonus point as long as the grade in it is a C+ or better. So they're weighted exactly the same. GPA is exactly the same. Now, they say that they don't care. And even FSU, and I've asked this question many times, they don't care. They say they don't care whether it is AP English Lang or ENC dual enrollment, ENC 1101. Where I'm going to tell you that there is a difference, and that may very well be true, to be honest with you. But where I'm going to tell you a difference is that when you're applying to, especially out-of-state universities, no matter how selective, there is a definite preference for AP, IB, over dual enrollment in almost all cases. There are definitely times when taking a dual enrollment is a good idea, and in my opinion, times when taking dual enrollment is not a good idea. Here's when it's a good idea. I'm very advanced in my math. I finished both years of calculus by junior year, and trust me, I have plenty of students, like say at Suncoast, who may finish both years of calculus by the end of junior year, as well as kids who I work with, let's say down at Pinecrest, same type of thing. And so senior year, what's left for them? There's no more AP math left. So, by the way, there are going to be a couple new AP courses. I'll get to that in a minute. Well, eventually. So, what do? They take a dual enrollment course that is higher up than calculus. They could take something like differential equations or linear algebra or third year of calculus. So, if I am taking a dual enrollment course that is higher than anything available at my high school, that's fine. And it will be important no matter where you're applying. Similarly, if let's say I've taken AP Psych and I loved it, and I did it as a junior. As a senior, if I wanted to take a dual enrollment abnormal psych course, which is a higher level course, that's fine. Or let's say I had a conflict in my schedule. I would like to take AP Spanish, and I'd also like to take AP Physics too, but they're both offered at fourth period, and I can't take both. So I have to take one and take the other one dual enrollment. And I'd put something in my application or ask my counselor if it was a college which accepted recommendations about the fact that there was a conflict. But if someone says to me, you don't want to take Mr. Jason, my battery is running low. It's not plugged in.
Yeah, don't worry. Keep going. You keep going.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. But if someone says to me, you don't want to take Mr. Jason for physics because he's much too hard and he doesn't really teach, and why don't you just instead of taking AP Physics, go over and take a dual enrollment physics course. That's not a good idea. Now, again, if you're applying to a state university in Florida, they say they won't care. But if I'm applying out of state, they prefer AP and IB. Those are universal. Those are international. They know what they are. But how do they know what a dual enrollment physics course is? How do they know anything about the quality of the school, where you took it? And in terms of ACE, it's not universally accepted. Yes, it's very accepted here in Florida, and there are other states as well. But I can tell you that if you're applying to something like UCLA or UC Berkeley or any of the state schools in California, they do not give you a bump for ACE. They do for AP and they do for IB. And they don't for honors if you're out of state, by the way. And when I visited USC, University of Southern California, and I was meeting with someone from admissions, and I specifically asked, how do you evaluate ACE? And she said to me, what's ACE? I said, you just answered my question. So you have to know where you're applying to decide, which AP, IB, ACE courses or ACE or dual enrollment courses you're going to be taking. Anything else, Jay? Okay. New college. Not sure why we still call it new. They really should have renamed it. It's not new. I mean, over 50. So 2 years ago, major overhaul, brand new president. He was the former House Speaker in Florida, Richard Cochran, and he was asked to turn this around and to sort of make it perhaps more conservative, a very liberal university. So there's a more conservative aligned board of trustees. There's a new curriculum, but it's still emphasizing classical and applied knowledge. Expanded their athletics, and their goal is to get up to 1,800 students by 2034, and also to become the best liberal arts college in America. And so the kinds of kids who are attracted there are intellectually curious, they're thoughtful, they have a passion for life and for learning, super interesting kids. So it is what I would say is Florida's public liberal arts college. There are 900 students there, all very intellectually curious. Liberal arts college, but there's a definite emphasis there on career building. You have a career coach from day one. AI, there's an AI focus that was added to their data science major. There is a great books, which is very liberal arts oriented, an area of concentration. You can have one-on-one tutorial classes. And it used to be that they gave no grades. But med schools don't like that when kids are applying to med school. And new college kids almost always apply to graduate school of some kind. So they no longer have just a narrative evaluation. They also have grades. They're the equivalent of A, B, C, and F. It's something like satisfactory plus, satisfactory minus, and something else. But that there is definitely like a narrative evaluation that goes with every course that you have taken. Very, very small classes. In January, you have a totally independent study period to just focus on one thing you want to learn more about. They have a study abroad program that's actually a partnership with FSU in terms of the international locations. And they have more Fulbright scholars than any other state university here in Florida. It's really a very customized, individualized environment, and almost all of their graduates are employed within a few months of graduation, which I think is really special, because we're seeing that it is harder and harder for newly out of college students to get entry-level jobs. So they were recognized by the Wall Street Journal as the #2 public feeder for the nation's top law schools, med schools, and business schools. Sports are really important there. And there is this wonderful book called Colleges That Change Lives that is geared towards fabulous places for the, let's say, could be a B or C, a BC student who says, I'm looking at a smaller college, more personalized, someplace that's really going to make a difference in my life. I'm not a status seeker. I'm not looking at the nation's most selective or largest universities. So there's this wonderful book, updated, I believe, every few years, called Colleges That Change Lives. And New College is in there. And it really is a life-changing experience, because these kids are just so intellectually curious. Okay, moving on now to the biggie, University of Central Florida. It is ranked as the top hospitality school in the country by Shanghai Ranking, which is a very prestigious ranking, and it is among the top 5 in the whole world. So let's start with the Rosen College of Hospitality Management. It's not on the main campus. It's closer into Orlando. It's about 30 minutes from the main campus that you can take a shuttle there. But if you think about it, I believe that Orlando has more hotel beds per square mile than any other city in America. So it makes sense that there be a large, hospitality, management school very, very close by. And they have an amazing facility on the Rosen campus. So there are a wide range of undergraduate majors. And some of those you can also do as a minor if you're a major in like something else. If I'm a math major, but I'm also interested in event management because I want to plan, weddings and bar mitzvahs. Thinking I might make more money there than I might as a mathematician. I don't know. I can do a minor in event management, but there's also certificates that you can get, which I think some of these are really cool, like professional tennis management. It's great if you're, let's say, a tennis player, or theme park and attraction management. That's going to come in a few minutes. You're going to see. But there are some just very, very interesting things to study at their, College of Hospitality Management. So the newest theme park in Orlando, the Epic University, it's actually sort of like a classroom for UCF, because you can, study it, and you can get internships there, and they're sort of embedding things about that into classes, in culinary classes, economics classes, engineering classes. It's really pretty cool. So theme park management is another, is a major there that, at UCF. Sorry, wrong one. I was very disappointed when they discontinued their BSMD program, which was very, very similar to FAU's. But they do have a partnership with their College of Medicine for like all kinds of pre-health events. If you're in the Burnett Scholars program, the Burnett is the honors program. It's the name of the honors program at UCF. And the top 10 nights was a guaranteed admissions for, I think it was the top 10% of your class. They've actually done away with both of those programs. So it is, not only is it our largest campus with more than 60,000 undergrads spread across their main campus, the Rosen campus, there's a downtown campus, and there's a health sciences campus. It's also the third largest in the United States based on undergraduate population. It's after Arizona State and Texas A&M. So just wanted to give you a sense of the number of applications that they received, and the admit percentage is broken down by summer and fall. You can see where you have a definite advantage if you apply for summer. And by the way, for our state, most of our state universities, might be all, but definitely most, let me say, you must do one summer in order to graduate. Why not make it? And by the way, it doesn't have to be at that campus. It could be at any campus. But if I'm going to start college in the fall, the end of August, why not start earlier in the summer? Personally, first of all, you only take 2 courses. Much easier to get A's. Get the lay of the land academically, socially, fraternity-wise, the local restaurants, the local hangouts. It makes coming back in the fall far less intimidating. You're with a much smaller cohort. You're going to make a lot of friends if you start, in the summer. So the fact that summer may be less competitive admission-wise than the fall, I firmly believe in the summer admissions, and get 2 courses under your belt, especially for that semester where you can't get, the 11 a.m. class with your favorite professor, and all that's available is 8 a.m. and you really don't want to get up early to take that. So I'm a big believer in summer admission. For some of our schools, UF in particular, it really doesn't matter. The admission stats are virtually the same for summer and fall. Okay. So a few facts. They seem to get quite a few National Merit Scholars. This year, 73 of them. These are kids who have scored as close to perfect as possible in the PSAT, have followed it up with top SAT scores, and their teachers love them. Very few kids here who were admitted submitted the classic learning test score. Almost everybody SAT, ACT, and we never went test optional during COVID. They're fabulous leadership opportunities, and I'm not sure exactly what is involved here, but they're part of NASA's Artemis program to return to the moon. So kids who are very interested in space exploration can find a home here. And their arena, which is also called the Dungeon, seats more than 10,000 fans. So some of their hottest majors, and they're newest majors. And right now, they're going through a huge faculty expansion. I mean, really huge, within engineering and computer science, because there's such a growing demand for engineers and computer scientists. And right now, they have over 15,000 students. That's about a quarter, 15, 30. Yeah, about a quarter of their undergraduate population is involved in, majors that are part of the College of Engineering and Computer Science. So really expanding their faculty in that area. So UCF, some of you think it stands for the University of Central Florida, right? Mm-mm. Under construction forever. So the downtown campus is their newest campus. It's about 6 years old now. It's shared with Valencia College, which is one of our state colleges. And the degrees that you can earn downtown are very much aligned with some of the local industries, so that it's easy to get, an internship or job, in the same area that you're going to school. And yes, there's a residence hall downtown. So that's newer construction, 6 years old. But here we have, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, lots and lots, a couple dozen recently completed projects on the main campus of UCF. A few more that are either in design or early, or it's still in construction phases. But newest, and they're so very excited about this, that the nursing pavilion on the Lake Nona campus just opened. And very much UCF is also known for its nursing program. There's tremendous demand for nurses in the state of Florida. If you like the sciences, if you love people, and you want to be assured of a good, high-paying job when you graduate, think about nursing. You should have AP Bio and AP Chem under your belt if you're going to go into nursing. So this just opened on the Health Science campus, and they've just reopened the 4th floor of the library. It was completely refreshed to give more collaboration opportunities. So there's more like study spaces for small group rooms. There's also like a giant reading room. It's just very, very state of the art. So this just reopened when school started in August. And the under construction, yes, it's under construction now, is the it's called Bounce House Roth Tower. They're adding a 4-story tower to the rest of the stadium, and it's going to be like luxurious suites and indoors and outdoors, and it'll make the game day experience very, very exciting. And it's going to serve actually as great event space for Orange County itself, for different groups to rent it out for corporate events. UCF is also featured on the college tour. And I'm ready to move into UF. Okay. So AI has been featured across the curriculum for a few years now. I want to say this may have been one of our first Florida universities to really start emphasizing AI. So no matter what your major is, if you want to get a certificate in AI, it takes 9 credits. It's typically 3 courses that you can earn a certificate in AI. And I can tell you, with job postings we're seeing now, having good knowledge of AI, going beyond things like, say, ChatGPT and Perplexity, which are just 2 things that I use every single day, no matter what. Having a deeper knowledge of AI is certainly going to help you land that first job. About 300 faculty members are teaching AI courses or using AI in their research. And in fact, there are more than 230 AI courses across all majors. So, did I miss a screen? No, okay. I guess that's coming up. So the Malachowski Hall for Data Science and Information Technology God, this could be at home at Florida Poly. It's so, ultra modern looking. It opened just a couple of years ago, and it connects various disciplines, together. Things that all have, say, data science and cyber technologies, in common, and maker spaces, which have become sort of a buzzword and a key on a lot of campuses, where kids can actually make things. And they, like, the most common thing I've seen are the use of 3D printers to create, something like this. You're making 3D things. But anyway, they have maker spaces there, which are super cool. Oh, here's the screen I was looking for. So UF has a computer called the Hypergator, and it is the most powerful university-owned supercomputer in the country. And they've had it for a number of years. It's not like it's brand new, they just got it. No. So, I mean, AI has, completely infused UF for, I would say, years before it became more and more popular on other campuses. They all have, some, AI things related now, but UF really initiated it. So what's new? Goodness, let's see. Bachelor's degree in Hebrew, a great books curriculum, a PPE, although theirs is PPEL, a philosophy, politics, economics, and law, very, very popular major, has been added at UF, and definitely now a cybersecurity specialization, which has just been proposed in computer engineering. I can't imagine that it's not going to be passed. And UF likes to encourage kids to do very unique combinations, and one that they mentioned was art and mechanical engineering, although I'm not sure how unique that is. I had a student who went to Carnegie Mellon many years ago, and combined mechanical engineering with art. So perhaps that was more common at a place like Carnegie Mellon, but it's becoming very, very popular at University of Florida. So their applications for this year, almost 100,000 applications, and it was more than a 20% increase over last year. And I mentioned this before, summer and fall are exactly the same. You do not have an advantage if you apply for summer. So apply for the semester that you prefer to start. There is more demand for fall. They claim they don't consider major in the review process, but again, they're going to be looking for higher level, let's say math and science, if you're applying for certain STEM majors, like say engineering. And if they're thinking about offering you the PACE program, and I'll get into it, they do have to look at your major, because there's certain majors that they offer in PACE. Now, UF is the school where you actually have to apply for housing even before you find out if you get in or not. And there is I hope it didn't go up. I forgot to look this up. I have to admit that. But there was, and probably still is, a $25 non-refundable housing deposit that you have to make with your application. So you're putting out another $25 and you're applying for housing before you get your decision at UF. If you wait for your decision and get in, A, congratulations for getting in, but B, you may not get housing. So they are pushing you to apply for housing within a couple of weeks of filing your application to UF. And they did add an early action. Their deadline is November 1st. So I'm going to say by around November 15th or 20th, you want to get your housing application in to be assured of housing. So they have a pretty wonderful honors program, and they even have a new state-of-the-art honors village. I believe there's 4 residence halls in there, and it houses 1,400 honors students. But here's the profile for an honors student. So can you imagine a weighted GPA of 4.7 to 4.8? This is a straight A student who took a load of advanced courses, AP or IB, dual enrollment, but probably got straight A's in order to have a 4.7, 4.8. And look at those SAT and ACT scores. I mean, they're crazy. And, of the 17,000 kids who applied last year, we don't have this year's numbers yet, only 11% of them were, accepted. And you have to go beyond just the numbers. You have to have the extracurricular and community service. And I'm going to say that extracurricular community service is even more important at the more selective state universities in Florida. This is the holistic information that they're looking for, because most of our state universities do not want recommendations. In fact, there's nowhere to even include it in those applications. And if somebody were to mail it in, trust me, they've said it to me before when I've asked, they will throw it away. They don't look at recommendations. But they are going to be looking, like FSU asks for your resume. I believe University of Florida asks you to write an essay about your most meaningful extracurricular activity. So those things are incredibly important to them. So FSU also has other pathways besides the main summer and fall. So they have something called Innovation Academy. So it's not AI, it's IA. And it's unusual in the sense that you don't start school in August like everyone else. You start in January and you go from January through August. So it's a spring-summer calendar. During the fall, you can do a study abroad, you can do research, you can get an internship. But you're going to school at a very, a unique time. And it's a much smaller, much more personalized program than going to UF itself. It only has a little more than 25 majors. And I've bolded the 5 majors that are the most popular for students who are currently in Innovation Academy. And every one of their majors has the same minor. You can guess it, right? It's innovation. But they all encompass things like entrepreneurship, starting things for yourself, designing things, being really creative. And again, these are kids who are looking for smaller, more interactive, more of a small college experience. But they recently added a brand new AI track. You don't have to be in it, but there is an AI track. And these are the latest admission stats, which I was able to finally just get from the assistant director of the program. But this is what it took to get into the next class that will be starting in this coming January. And higher percent admit than University of Florida itself, but it still looks like the GPA is, and the scores are very, very high. Okay. PACE, the pathway to campus enrollment. You don't apply to PACE. You can get selected, and it's an automatic selection if you're sort of maybe a little bit lower down than the kids who were admitted for the regular summer or fall, and you're automatically considered for it only as a backup, not as the main consideration, as a backup if you're applying to one of those majors that was listed. And they haven't released their current profile, but this is, last year's profile. But basically, you are starting online, and you have to complete at least 2 semesters online, so full year online, or at least 15 credits online. And so there's a total of 60 credits that you're completing, but some of those credits are coming from APIB, ACE, and dual enrollment. So it's great for a student who, for instance, wants to start at home and not actually go to campus, wants to start, online. And then there are the Gator programs, which I would say to some extent are similar to FSU's pathway programs. They're in a wide range of fields. There's a lot of computer stuff, but there's also architecture and interior design and construction management. And they're at either Santa Fe College or the State College of Florida in Manatee, Sarasota. They also make a commitment to their first-gen and low-income students with 2 programs, the Promise Program and the Opportunity Program. And these are not programs that you can apply to. I think you get offered them. So I only found this out a few years ago when I started doing this presentation and started digging for more data than I was getting directly from the colleges. Did you know that Gatorade was invented at the University of Florida? I think that's so cool. I mean, think about it. The Florida Gators. I mean, we should have known. Okay. But what else is really special about UF? Well, I think that there are a couple of things. First of all, is their stadium, the Swamp, and it is the 12th largest college football stadium in the country. And last year, or this year actually, the last NCAA men's basketball champions, UF won it in April of 2025. They recently announced a new graduate school campus that they're opening in Jacksonville, and it's going to open next year. And it will be things like engineering, management, data analytics, computer science. They're also going to add a master's degree in law, which is for non-lawyers who are working in an area of compliance. A number of different master's degrees and lots of stuff that's AI related. One of the things that had been a long-term goal for University of Florida that was finally achieved in 2021 is looking at the U.S. News and World Report rankings, and I am going to go into them at the end. They have long yearned for being one of the top 5 public universities in America. They were looking for equality with schools like equality in rankings with schools like UCLA, Berkeley, Michigan, who else is up there? Virginia, North Carolina, Texas. Those have pretty much been the top ones. And finally, in 2021, UF was the very first state university in Florida to make it to the top 5 of state universities. This year, they're tied as the number 7. So they're still way up there, and they're tied with the University of Texas in Austin. And the other colleges that I just mentioned are also in that, very top group. But that is why we are seeing one of the reasons we are seeing more and more out-of-state students applying to University of Florida and Florida State. And then there's the trickle-down effect looking at USF, UCF, and the others. Okay. Forbes has its own ranking, and it was named number 5 in the nation in the current ranking, which is saying for this next year, University of Florida is number 5 public in the nation and number 30 across all universities, in the nation. Now going up to North Florida, still, further north than the University of Florida, we're going to look at University of North Florida and its Lazy Pool. It has 6 flagship programs. One of the best known ones is in transportation and logistics, although I've never had a student apply to that. But it is at a major intersection of 2 of the biggest highways in America, US 1 running from Florida up to Maine. And I think the other one is the 10, and they do call it the 10, running from practically from the University of North Florida campus all the way out to California. So it's the intersection of those 2. Their shipping port, I believe, is one of the largest in the country. And there's also a major railroad that goes through the area. So transportation and logistics has become super, popular. Definitely a flagship program there. But they're also very well known for things like music, and nursing. And you can see that nursing is one of its, most popular majors. So is kinesiology, which is a major that often leads to a career in physical therapy. And of course, computer science is in there now too. Among the newest, cybersecurity, we're seeing that pop up all over the place, and information technology, again, very computer oriented, and fintech, financial information, computing information, sport management, growing, and environmental science. And environmental science is a unique major there because all 6 of its flagship colleges, flagship programs, have courses that are part of the environmental science new major. So let's talk about Jacksonville for a moment. It's a financial capital of America, one of our financial capitals, and it is our largest city, which surprised me when I found that out a few years ago because I always thought it was Miami, but it's not. It's Jacksonville. And businesses have been moving there like crazy. It's a very, business welcoming city, and they're moving because of the low taxes, possibly for politics, possibly for the weather, but definitely the low taxes driving northern business moving south. So it has become a hub for companies that are focused on financial technology, and so UNF has a fintech academy that focuses on partnerships with industry, and there are a number of majors that are part of the undergraduate experience that are involved in fintech, a major, a minor. So definitely it's a very cool place to be. I think it's also Florida's youngest city with more higher percentage of young people than any place else in the state. So Coggin College of Business is it broke ground in October a year ago. It isn't open yet. It's basically expanding, it's renovating, it's adding new space, but it's a top business school, very, state of the art. A brand new esports arena is going to be, let me go back to the picture a little bit, is going to be opening next year. Again, that's sweeping colleges across America. And if you love the beach, you're 20 minutes from the beach in Jacksonville. You're about 2 hours, by the way, from, FSU. It's a school that is very much expanding. Its goal is getting up to 25,000 students by 2028. Jacksonville has been rated by U.S. News as one of the best places to live in the United States. It has a great sorority fraternity life there, and a number of living and learning communities. And again, that's where you're living with friends who have similar interests. You could be living in, say, French House, and where everyone is speaking French. It was ranked by Fiscal Times as one of the 10 top public colleges with insanely luxurious dorms. One of the things I personally think is very cool with it is that you may know that Mayo Clinic is known as one of the best medical clinics in the U.S. Main campus is out west, but it does have a big campus, big presence in Jacksonville. And so there is a relationship between Mayo Clinic Jacksonville and UNF where students can do internships or take a doctoral degree at the Mayo Clinic. Direct entry nursing program is similar to FAU's. I think it's not quite as competitive to get in as FAU. And the Coggin College of Business that we just talked about has been named by Princeton Review 17 years in a row as one of our nation's top business schools. And there is a guaranteed experiential learning opportunity for all students. Typically that means internship, but it could also mean like a study abroad. And it was also featured on Amazon Prime for the college tour. And now moving, south, but on the west coast to University of South Florida. Any questions, Jay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the honors, the newer honors college that opened on the USF campus. So USF actually has 3 campuses. It's one university. It's accredited as one university, and therefore they don't share separate stats, admission stats on the individual campuses. But, Tampa is the main campus, the biggest one in terms of the acreage as well as the student population. A wonderful campus in St. Pete, if you like the idea of being both downtown and on the water and with smaller classes. And the newest one is the one in Sarasota, Manatee, that now has a residence hall. It is the smallest, but it does have a unique partnership with Stetson Law for direct admission, assuming you did well when you were at Sarasota Manatee. Tampa, even though they're not going to release admission stats based on campus, the main campus in Tampa is the most competitive admission of all of them. And these are the signature programs at each of them. It stands to reason. St. Pete, marine biology, you're on the water, really popular. The nursing program at Sarasota Manatee is a little is unique. It's really for people who already have a first degree in something else and they're earning a second degree because they decided they wanted to go into nursing. Perhaps they either hated their jobs or couldn't get a good job related to their undergraduate major, and they do have somewhat of a STEM background. They have a unique nursing program there, but I did want to share with you what the signature programs are at each of the 3 campuses. Okay, so they also have a BS MD program. It doesn't work like FAUs. It works a little bit differently. You're applying to USF and you're also applying to the Judi Robinovitz Honors College. And you basically have to apply midway through your freshman year. And there are minimum requirements. Basically, you have to maintain a 3.6 by your freshman year, a 3.7 by your sophomore year. And you are applying to the Morsani med school after your sophomore year. They're not very sharing with current statistics. So what I do have is like some of the benchmarks and things that the students who got in a few years ago were doing. But basically, they're pretty top students who know that they are interested in medicine and really don't have to go through the horrendous med school application process. You do have to maintain a high, GPA, do research, do medical observation, do a little bit above average on the MCAT, but it's a really nice feature to have at University of South Florida. But they also have other double degree programs with, in the health sciences, also in medicine. The Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine actually has more than one campus, but one of them is in not at Lake Erie, I believe it's here in Florida, where you can get go from a BS to a DO, or you can also do dentistry there. And they have a wonderful program with getting a JD, your law degree at Stetson, in not 7 years, which is typical, but is a 6-year program. So there's a lot of interesting double degree programs at University of South Florida. Among the newest construction has been the Judi Robinovitz Honors College, and certainly the esports living lab. Again, esports is taking over. And looking at their newest majors, again, we're seeing lots of stuff that's computer related, and financial technology will actually be a major next year. They are expanding their College of Nursing. It will happen next year. It's under construction now, and it's going to accommodate, basically it will wind up graduating at least 500 additional nursing students by 2028. There's a tremendous shortage of nurses here in Florida, so it's wonderful that they're expanding it. And they are actually building a new stadium. They do have a stadium, but this will be an on-campus stadium, and it should be done by 2027. And they even have their first game scheduled against Louisville. Okay, here's artificial intelligence again. The Bellini College of Artificial Intelligence, Cybersecurity, and Computing. It will be the first college in Florida, is completely devoted to these areas, and it's been named after its benefactors, Arnie and Lauren Bellini. And it's really positioning Tampa Bay as Cyber Bay. It's going to become a national hub for AI and cybersecurity. And honestly, it's the cybersecurity workforce is really growing like crazy. And the more you look at job postings, the more you're going to see that there's a tremendous need for AI literacy. So they are going to have the first college essentially of AI here in the state of Florida. They already have majors that are related to the subjects that will be part of Bellini, they started in 2023. And I don't think there's been any college in the United States that has risen faster in the rankings than University of South Florida. If I look at U.S. News and World Report, and I'm going to give you a caveat about that in a minute, USF is ranked as the third highest state university in Florida. It's not, when you look at the statistics, it looks like UCF might be a little bit harder to get into, but USF is ranked as the third, the third highest state university in Florida. I don't like to share rankings in general. I do rely a lot on U.S. News and World Report, but I use it more to compare SAT and ACT ranges and also percent accepted. The new version of U.S. News and World Report will be coming out next week, and it will be called, Best Colleges for 2026. So when it comes out in 2025, it's called the Best Colleges for 2026. But it is based on admission data for students who actually enrolled, not in 2025, but in 2024, because all of the data they're government databases that the colleges have requirements of data that they must report to the federal government. And it's been like this for a number of years, but it's always like a year behind. And the data, when you look at their like mid 50% for SAT and ACT, it's not for the accepted kids, it's for the enrolled kids. Those numbers aren't not necessarily that different from the accepted students, but I use it a lot to if I can't think of a college that's great in engineering, I can look at all the colleges, their whole several hundred list of colleges that have wonderful colleges of engineering within them. So I don't necessarily take it seriously that, let's say, Princeton is ranked higher than, I don't know, Penn. That does not mean that Princeton is better. It just may mean that it might be harder to get into, but it means that they're both ranked, incredibly highly. So I will use this more for generalities than anything else. USF has more patents than many other colleges, and in fact, it's way up there with places like MIT and Stanford, and Caltech. It's number 34 in the world, not just the United States, in terms of the number of patents. So new inventions that have come out of, let's say, faculty or typically graduate students at the University of South Florida. If you love the beach, it's another great place to go, because three of the best beaches in the world are very close, or actually I should say in the world, in the United States, three of the best top-ranked beaches in the United States are very close to the University of South Florida. And they actually just launched a brand new varsity tennis team. It's the women's lacrosse, and it's the first new women's team since 1995. It is one of our preeminent research universities here, in Florida. So if you're super interested in research, USF is also a fabulous place to go. Guess what? We're at number 12. Let me see if there's any more questions. This is the University of West Florida Stadium. I'm going to jump ahead of myself and tell you it is one of the most beautiful in America. Part of that is because it's actually right on the water, which is pretty cool. So, University of West Florida, these were the top 10 majors for freshmen. It's the nursing is a pre-BSN program, but you can also see within here, there is lots of emphasis on STEM. By the way, the second most, I'd say, popular and second hardest things to get into after computer science, well, there's two of them. There's engineering, and especially mechanical engineering, and I'd say computer engineering. And after that is business. So that and anything related to computer science, these are the hardest majors to get into. And they're absolutely looking for kids whose extracurricular support those majors. And by the way, that's true for anything. If I say I want to be an English major, perhaps I've entered some creative writing contests. Perhaps I've, written some short stories. They're looking for my extracurricular that's related to it. Perhaps I tutor kids, in English. There is lots of collaboration going on at University of West Florida. It is also one of our smaller universities, and they have a terrific honors program there as well. One of the things I think is most cool is that the kids do manage, a $1 million bond fund and a $500,000 stock fund. And they have two different management courses. This is not monopoly money. They are managing university funds, and they're really getting real world experience. They also compete, and their bond fund management team actually came in second in national competition against 150 other universities. Well, 150 universities. That's pretty terrific for not a incredibly well-known university outside of Florida. So some pretty cool stuff. You know that they're in a different time zone. They're not in our time zone. They're an hour earlier. They're much closer to Alabama than they are to us. They're also by a phenomenal beach if you love the beach. And Pensacola, which is where they are, was also, voted as one of America's best cities and also one of its safest. Within the state university system, they are the only Division II team, and they've been named as having one of the most scenic stadiums. Basically, I think I told you one of the most beautiful because it's on the water. And if you are an outdoorsy kid, you will love University of West Florida because of the hiking trails, the biking trails, the nature preserve, all the recreational activities that are, in the immediate area. And also has very, very small classes. So sometimes, a lot of my families are looking for places where their kids can go to college where they have small classes, but which are not expensive. And here's the problem. If I go to something like, let's say in Florida, Rollins or Stetson, or out of state, let's say smaller, Elon or High Point, these are places that are significantly, maybe triple the price, triple the price of, say, State University of Florida. But yet I can go to a school like University of West Florida, and I can get that same small classroom experience and a much better learning experience, and at the price of a Florida education, which I would say, not counting Bright Futures, but if you're looking at room, board, books, fees, tuition, you're probably looking at less than $30,000 a year. I'm not saying that that's a little bit of money, but when I compare it to some of our nation's top universities and even some of our top state universities as an out-of-stater, you're going to be paying close to $90,000. University of Michigan, at State University for out-of-staters, $90,000. I mean, look at the Bork we have here in Florida. Okay, it's actually been in the news. They have a brand new president, Manny Diaz. Sorry, I know nothing about him because he only just arrived a few months ago. One of the things that I think is really cool is that a few of the professors and students develop these goggles that can help doctors detect Alzheimer's disease much, much earlier. They're also an R2 research university, so we know that there's a lot of research going on there. And they have a major center for cybersecurity there, and they were just awarded funds to expand its training for Florida government personnel. And how about this? They won the men's golf NCAA Division II championship this year. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, done with the state universities, into some more general. There are other pathways to admission to all of our state universities. In fact, each of our state universities is required to have sort of a partner or target institution, one of our state colleges, with which there is a program that sort of guides you through that. If you start at this community, what used to be a community college, but is now a state college, if you start here, you're guaranteed admission to the state university it's affiliated with, as long as you meet the requirements of that you've taken certain courses and you have a certain GPA. So they all have programs like this where they are called either bridge programs or transition programs. And we have 28 state colleges, the list of all of them. And there is a statewide articulation agreement, in fact, that if you go to any one, like let's just say you go to Palm Beach State College or Broward College or Miami-Dade College, if you get your AA degree, it's called your Associate of Arts degree. It doesn't mean you're an art major, by the way, it's just called Associate of Arts, like there is a Bachelor of Arts degree. You are guaranteed admission to one of our state universities for the remaining 60 credits for the remaining 2 years. You're not necessarily guaranteed to the one of your choice. In other words, it doesn't say, well, if you go to Palm Beach State College, you can go to UF. No, it means you can go to one of our state universities. It's just guaranteed admission. Okay. There are also some very specific transfer pathway programs. Sorry, this is the one that has sort of the direct route. Sorry, this is the one with direct route. What I gave you before, sorry, these are not the direct route. These are the pathway programs. There are the bridge and transition programs that allow you to start at that university. It might not be the main campus, it might be the summer, but that you transition into the main program eventually. These are the transfer pathways where there's a specific like Gator engineering program that if you get involved in that in the state college, then you're guaranteed admission to the University of Florida. So these are specific to the university. And one of the downloads that is listed in the beginning gives you much more information about these transfer pathways. So I'm going to end with just showing you how Florida colleges stack up to the rest of the country. So these are the top 6 state universities. I've given you 2 rankings. One is the state university ranking. And just because UVA is number 3 doesn't mean it's better than UNC number 4 or better than UC San Diego number 5 or better than UF number 6. It just means these are among the top, the most prestigious, if you will, state universities. And then if you were to add in all the privates in between, it shows you that University of Florida is ranked number 30 amongst all state and private universities in America. FSU, which is our other flagship university, is ranked number 22 and 55. So our 2 flagship universities are in the top 22 in the nation, which I think is pretty special. That might change next week with the new U.S. News. So this was the U.S. News that came out in September of 2024 for the rankings for 2025. 9 of our state universities are ranked in terms of having just being in national ranks. Yes, there are some high numbers in there, but you know what? There's many, 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 more state universities than this. And we have 9 of our 12 are ranked nationally. We have 9 of our 12 ranked for business of having top business programs in the country. And all 12 of them are ranked in engineering. There's 2 different engineering ranks, depending upon whether they give a doctoral degree or they only go up to a bachelor's degree. But all 12 are ranked for engineering. And I'd like to say toward the end, just if you enjoyed this webinar, we have lots of other webinars that are on our website. We give webinars all the time. They're all free. They all have recordings. You're more than welcome. We invite you to just register for a future webinar or look at some of our previous webinars on things like how to fill out your Common App. What are the most notable trends in last year's whole, college admissions process, and how does that affect kids who are applying today? How to write a great essay. So lots of wonderful information for all of you. And, we do hope that you'll consider, engaging our services at Judi Robinovitz Associates for just private college counseling. We do boot camps every summer. Our boot camps are over for this summer, but we love to work with kids individually. And I have a whole team of college counselors and essay experts that, help with the, entire process. And I'm happy to take some additional questions if there are any. Whew. We did this in just over 2 hours, which is about par for the course. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Sorry for keeping you so long. Just lots of information to share. Have a great evening. And thanks so much for attending. Have a good night.